Feeling stressed and worried about the impact that's having on your health? We can measure that with a cortisol test. In this video, I'll break down how chronic stress is harming your hormones and making you gain weight, and then ways to reduce it naturally. As a doctor specializing in men's health, I've helped hundreds of men optimize their testosterone and blood sugar levels, and cortisol is often a major component that's missed. So today I'm going to discuss 5 things: how to measure cortisol accurately, how to beat stress with your breath, how to eat right to control your blood sugar, and how to move in order to diffuse the sympathetic stress response. So here's the problem. Chronic stress leads to weight gain, poor sleep, and even lower testosterone, making it harder to maintain muscle and energy, which is stressful in itself. There's a saying, cortisol castrates, and that's because high cortisol steals the building blocks from your body that it needs to make testosterone. So if you keep carrying around yesterday's stress into today, you get stuck in this vicious cycle. But here's the good news. You absolutely can manage stress and cortisol naturally, without sitting around and doing meditation all morning or going to a silent retreat. And today I'm breaking down exactly how to do that. Because let's be real, if you don't learn how to manage stress, it will become a bigger problem. And at some point, your doctor is going to start pushing an anti-anxiety medication, an antidepressant. So let's try to avoid that if we can. So stick with me until the end, because I'll also share a simple challenge you can try for the next 3 months to track your progress and see real results. Now let's dive in. First, you have to measure what you want to manage. I say this in every video, and measuring cortisol to assess chronic stress is no different. And the keyword there is chronic. With stress. So if you're like zebras and you experience a stressful situation, but then quickly forget about it and move on, then you're good. But if the bulk of your day is high stress, high alertness, then you're at a risk of burning out. We can assess this with your cortisol levels. The challenge, if you don't measure it, is that stress feels really subjective. Some days you feel fine, other days you're pretty overwhelmed, but numbers don't lie. So checking your morning cortisol levels through a blood test or a 24-hour saliva test or even a urine test will show exactly how stress is impacting your hormones. Because there's a natural cortisol peak first thing in the morning to help you wake up, followed by a steady decline all day. So we know what's normal, and we can compare that graph with your data. Because the thing is, when cortisol is high for too long, so you wake up and it's high, but it stays high all day because you're so stressed, well, this disrupts your entire body. And that leads to stubborn belly fat and insulin resistance and even suppression of testosterone production. So step 1, get tested. Then you'll have a baseline to work from, as well as better understanding of the consequences to running on adrenaline all the time, and hopefully even some motivation to address this issue. Now let's talk about your breathing. So has anyone ever told you to just take a deep breath when you're stressed? It's pretty annoying, right? The truth is most people breathe wrong anyway, so this advice really is useless. So if you're stressed and you take a big inhale, you're actually activating your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. That's the opposite of what you want. So instead, you need to slow your breath rate down and focus on longer exhales. So better advice when you're stressed is to take a deep exhale instead of a deep breath. So here's a quick guide. So you want to breathe in through your nose for 4 to 5 seconds, and then slowly exhale through your nose again for 5 to 6 seconds, so a little longer. And pause and repeat that for a couple minutes. I practice this with the Breathe Plus app on my iPhone, but there are many options for a paced breathing tool to help guide you. The point is, the strategy activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which quickly lowers cortisol and calms your heart rate. In simple terms, you're signaling to your body that it's safe, the danger has passed. You can't fake this. So think about if a grizzly bear were charging at you, there's no way your breathing would calm down. But once the bear runs off, your body naturally relaxes. This is the same idea when you're using your breath to tell your nervous system the threat is over. But keep in mind that this is a skill. Breathing is a skill. So you want to practice something like diaphragmatic breathing before bed or first thing in the morning when you're naturally calm, and then apply it in a stressful situation in order to train your body to respond instead of react to stress. So try it right now. Yeah, I'm serious. Try it. So pause the video and start with just a long exhale, and you'll feel that shift. That is your nervous system calming down. Next, I want to discuss mastering emotional control. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received as a parent was don't get on the roller coaster. Think about it. Your kid is throwing a tantrum and then you get angry too, and suddenly you're both yelling and stress levels are just skyrocketing. The same happens at work and relationships and commuting. The key here is control. When something fires you up, recognize that emotional surge, so self-awareness, and instead of reacting, just pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, does this require an emotional response or a solution? It's usually the latter. The interesting thing about psychological stress is that it's not itself that harms you. It's how you see it. So another bill in the mail, well, most people immediately think this is bad. But what if it leads to something better? Maybe you struggle, adapt, and end up more successful because of it. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but the point is stress comes from how you label situation, not the situation itself. So if you believe that, then change your perception of stressors. Start labeling things differently, or at least stop automatically assuming this is bad. Big picture, managing cortisol isn't just about avoiding stress. It's about training your body and mind to stay level-headed despite stress, because life is stressful, probably always will be. So next time you're about to jump on that roller coaster of emotion, don't. Take a deep exhale and reframe your thoughts. Okay, now let's talk about how your diet impacts your body's stress response. Because did you know that blood sugar spikes trigger cortisol spikes? So when you eat a high carb, high ultra processed food, your blood sugar shoots up and then crashes back down quickly. And guess what? Your body responds to that crash by releasing cortisol. It's pretty stressful to think that you have energy and then quickly dries up. So if you're constantly feeling fatigued or anxious or moody, it might not be psychological stress. It could just be your diet. So here's what to do. Prioritize protein, especially your first meal of the day. Aim for 30 to 40 grams of protein in each meal to stabilize blood sugar. Next, prioritize healthy fats like avocado and olive oil to support hormone balance and overall stress, which may help keep cortisol in check. Big picture, when it comes to your diet, you can't go wrong if you just focus on whole, nutrient-dense foods while avoiding the sugar-heavy snacks, because those tank your energy and send you back to the fridge, at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So no cereal, no bagels, no quick sugar hits. So fixing your diet is one of the easiest ways to lower stress immediately today. Now let's talk about how movement helps break down or use up cortisol. You've all heard of the fight or flight response, right? Well, to summarize what that means, that your body is preparing for a physical response. So you run away or fight when you're stressed. And so your muscles tighten, your heart rate increases, and your energy just surges. But when that happens, and then you just sit at your desk all day, that cortisol doesn't get used up. It just lingers, which causes inflammation and the weight gain and the mental fog, because your body's ready to take action and combat the problem, but the stressor's in your head, and then you sit still and you can't control it. So here's the solution. Walk it off. Walk after stressful meetings. Walk after big meals. Walk to regulate your blood sugar and cortisol. You can start strength training, which also lowers the stress hormones over time, especially. Lastly, experiment with just short bursts of activity. So even like 10 jumping jacks or running up and down the stairs can dissipate the stress in a moment. So I knew having a packed schedule would be demanding, but I wasn't prepared for the emotional weight of my patient's struggles. So we discussed life or death situations. I hear about abuse. I help some people through suicidal thoughts. It's all heavy stuff. What's helped me the most is movement. It allows me to process and release that stress so I don't carry it home with me. I remember at the last clinic I worked at, I would go outside and do these wind sprints on a grass hill after stressful appointments. In my current office, I keep a kettlebell to do strength training on my lunch break. So think of movement as your body's way of burning off excess cortisol. So use it. So here's your challenge. For the next 3 months, commit to tracking your cortisol levels and then practicing these 5 strategies. So check your cortisol levels, practice breathwork daily and apply it as needed, master your emotional response to stressors, eat to stabilize your blood sugar, and move daily. And then you can recheck your cortisol and see how much it improves. Okay, if you found this helpful, subscribe for more science-backed natural tools for men's mental health, physical health, and performance.